most of you know me from a few weeks back, but just super quickly, if anyone doesn't. So I'm Kieran. I was 2016 full-time graduate. On the back of that, joined Bain for 4.5 years, and then mid last year made the jump and went to corporate. And now I'm a head of strategy at Australia Post. Cool. So let's talk about clearing slides. And I sort of said this is about the path to so what. And why do I say that? Well, interestingly, slides are important, and we want to see that you have a logical way to process the data and the information on it. And it's all about how you do that in a way to take the insight, to identify the insight, and get to the point of the so what. What does this mean for the problem I'm answering? So it's the path from, oh yeah, we do have some information on that. Here's an exhibit, to the so what it means for the case and what you're going to do next. And so I want to talk about a way to structure and sort of some tips and tricks and pitfalls and a way to structure the way you might go about that. But one question, one sort of thought is, obviously consultants love slides, do a lot of slides and PowerPoint and that. So it's a key tool and it's a key communication tool. So what are we really testing here? Two things as in the interview. One is that you're able to process information, that you've given information, which, data information, and it might come from slides, it might come in other forms from the client, and understand what it means for the problem and the implications of it and how it might help you solve the problem. The second thing is, if you can't, slide form becomes a little bit of an art. So you want to see that someone's got a little bit of a knack for being able to work through a slide and clear a slide and present it, and present it well, but also that it might be a leaner that they're good at putting slides together or communicating effectively. So clearing the slides, I've got some stuff here I've called the basics. So I'll talk about that first, and then we'll get into maybe some sort of examples to try and bring it to life. So the first one is use a structured approach. So there's actually a slightly formulaic way to step through a slide. So you're going to read the title of the slide, you're going to go the axes, the notes, the sources, the main data points, the call outs, and then you're going to go to the interesting and important, highlight the important, interesting aspects. So you take 10 to 15 seconds, we'll process through in that structured way so you don't miss anything, and then you're going to anchor it, then you're going to move on from that to talk about what's interesting about the slide. Now, part of what you're doing here is buying yourself time and making sure you don't miss anything. Because the pressure you feel when you first sort of get it is, I need to get the so what or the insight really quickly. And you do need to get it to it, but also you also need to buy yourself a bit of time, because no one can look at a slide and instantly know why it's important or not. You need to actually have a bit of time to process it. And so it's better to do that in a verbalized, structured way than it is to sort of just start to look at stuff and quiet, or try and instantly go, oh, well, this bit's really important, because then you'll miss other stuff. So this also shows that it's a repeatable formula for how you might go about it. Talk it through. Verbalize. Don't get an exhibit and go, oh, can I have a minute or two to look at this? Spend a minute or so looking at it and go, okay, well, I think this is what it means. Better to actually show your thought process and talk them through what you're seeing initially, and you're sort of getting from very superficial things. Okay, so it's the title of the slide is X. So this is a slide about that. Key axes. Okay, we're seeing on one side we've got this, on the other we're showing that against time, and you're actually literally talking it through. And it also allows the interview to see how you think and to see that you are processing in a structured way, because consulting interviews are about demonstrating your ability to logically and structurally work through something in a structured way. Bringing outside information. So don't limit to purely what's on the slide. So how does it relate to the previous slides given? How does it relate to your structure, what you've thought about the industry? What do you know about that topic that adds value, if something, that might add another layer, dimension to that? But very much needs to link to other exhibits given. And then the process broadly, once you've sort of processed the mechanics of the slide, is what's the insight? So what's interesting, what's insightful about what's shown here? And remember, having no insight is insightful in itself. So don't feel like you have in every, one or two cases out of 20, there's nothing here that's particularly relevant. Understand and relate what this means to the problem you're trying to solve. So how does it give me a better understanding of and a bit of the path to solving this problem? And then determine what's next best to do. So, well, Sam, we've done 3-question loop.
Yeah, Terry went through 3-question loop, but I actually said to Terry last week, his 3-question loop was a bit different to your 3-question loop. So if you want to kind of go through yours quickly, that would be great.
So just quickly, 3-question loop is the cheats way to use hypothesis thinking to solve a problem, in essence. And the 3 questions that you should always have top of mind is, what problem am I solving? And so super critical here, if you're not relating what you're doing back to the problem you're trying to solve, why are you doing it? So you might not need to verbalize it all the time, but always have the problem. What problem am I trying to solve? The second question is, at any point of the case, from when I've read you the problem statement to when you're about to synthesize for the CEO, what's my best answer right now? So once again, think like a CEO. Your best answer might just be on what you can thinking like a CEO and what I can think about the industry and the broad first principles view of what I can think about the industry. View to the end of the case when you've actually got quite a developed answer and you've done some work through some exhibits and data. And the third question is, if I had more time, what would I do next to make that answer better? So consultants, 2 things. Consultants always have a current view on what the answer is, their hypothesis. They also have a view on, well, how would I make this answer better? How would I get more confidence in it? And so it's really important that if you just think about it like that and have that top of mind at all times, at any stage of the case, and you can practice it. Once again, when you're doing a case, actually ask people at different points. Okay, well, what's your 3-question loop? What's particularly the second and third questions, because the first one's kind of implicit, but what's the best answer right now, and what would you do about it? This is directly tied to clearing a slide. Clearing a slide, you get to the insight. Does that change my current answer? So what's my best answer now based on this information I've learned? What would I do next to make this answer better? And so literally you should verbalize that in the case. Get to the end of the slide. Okay, so what this has told me is that it's clearly not a cost problem, and what we have is a volume issue on the revenue side, whatever it's going to be. That's question 2. I've updated my caused by X or Y. I've updated my my hypothesis and my answer. To really understand that more, what I'd like to do is look at what the competitors are doing and understand how they're taking volume off us. What would I do next to make that better? Super important for consultants, right? Because we don't have consultants deal in ambiguity, and strategy is solving ambiguous problems. And there's not a formula. It's not like it's an exam with a formula you can go through. It's really, you've got to think about it and go, okay, well, what does this mean? What does it tell me? What is the most important thing I find out next to make this answer better? And then that's what you go and do. That's how you work out what you're going to do next in the job when you're doing a case. Cool. What have I got on here? And yeah, and I just sort of had another quote. So, PowerPoint is a lot of what we do, and it can feel like death like PowerPoint, and they are trying to move to Tableau and other interesting ways as well. But they are an extremely effective tool. So, but we spend a lot of time as teaching our new consultants how to clear slides. So how to actually clear and communicate slides. And so it's an important part of the job. So actually clearing a slide, and there's slightly different in the case, you're not quite presenting it, but it is very similar. So does someone want to have a go at clearing this? Actually, as another point, before we do that, one way to practice this, I find really cool, I've done with on training courses I've run, is it's called slide roulette. So you basically put 3 to 5 random slides together into a pack, and then someone without seeing them has to present them and spend about 30 seconds talking through each slide. And they don't see the next slide, so they click the button to flick over the screen to the next slide. So it's a really good way to practice this. And the slides should be unconnected. Like one could be a picture of Donald Trump, sipping water. The next one could be, something from the AFR about a really detailed financial slide about the share price of something over time. The third one might be, a whatever. So you have quite unconnected slides to make it a bit of fun. So that's a really cool way to practice that one. Someone have a go at clearing this slide from our friends at Duke. Josh, I'm going to pick on you because.
Okay, so I'd start by talking through. So this is for the thrill park. We've got the number of daily visitors that's estimated in thousands. I would probably ask a clarifying question. I'm assuming 0 is today and this is forecasting into the future, or is it? Yep, okay. So we see that the average across this 150-day period is 10. But that there's a noticeable swing throughout that period. So there is some sort of seasonality type trend going on. So what I would be interested in understanding from here is to whether we could look at ways in which we can adjust the pricing in a logical way over this time period to try and improve the benefits.
Cool. I think is there anyone else got any other insights on this? I think there's a really tricky one here, actually, just on the way the x-axis is laid out and what that's telling you.
Yeah, I was going to say it looks like they're not open an even number of days.
Yeah, so I want to say it's not an even number of days open per month. Is an interesting, so like in June, July, August, it looks like they're open every day. September, October, it looks like they might be open on the weekends.
It could be in the Northern Hemisphere, given that sort of seasonal trend.
Yep. Duke would probably be a US base, I reckon, is probably this case, given it's coming out of Duke, yeah. What else might you be able to do with this? What could you calculate based off this? Revenue. Good, yeah. $50 a day, average entrance fee, average number of people per day. We know the number of days that it's open. So it's something we could calculate if it was useful at that point. So look, in terms of this exhibit, so exactly right, Josh. I think you did a good job of sort of clearing through and sort of following the structure. We can always think about something a little bit more and look at something a little bit more depthly, but the title's pretty meaningless here. It's the first exhibit that we've got, so not actually that useful, but let's not discount it. We've checked out the axis. We've got the daily visitors in thousands, and we've got the day, and so that's the days that it's open. I think the one on this one is the link from then looking at the day at the bottom again, and then looking at the months, and then potentially grabbing that insight around that it's not open every day. It's probably a little bit more of a hidden one. I've then looked at other notes because I've had slides where there's a big note at the bottom that says something that's super important, and people don't read it, and then just you have to actually say, oh, is that still true given that note at the bottom? And they're like, oh, no. Or the note might be the source, and the source might be able to say, oh, look, this has come from here. Actually, that's quite reliable. I think that'd be a pretty good source. I'm quite confident in this information. Or, wow, that looks like it's kind of a bit mixed and hashed together. I don't know how much value we could actually place on this data here. Another one is I've used one where it actually has it's a regression, and it has I'm going to say the confidence number in the data and just in a little box, and basically it means that 3 of the graphs are useless because there's no real correlation with it under the regression, and so there's only one of them that's valuable. But then people try and use all 3 they don't look at that and acknowledge what it is to then be able to use that as part of the information. And then we might look at so what's interesting. I mean, interesting is the trend of the line, the shape of the line over time. It's one thing. What's interesting was the average number. That's kind of interesting. It tells us that. And then there might be a few other things that we've found that's interesting that you might comment on. And I like bringing in, this is clearly in Northern Hemisphere if we didn't know that already. Quite seasonal, and a few other things. And then there's so what and what's next, or what's the insight and what's next. And so in this case, it might be, hey, we can calculate revenue. That might be really useful for us to understand. We might need to look at ways, if we want to increase that, we either need to be able to charge more during the summer when we're open, or we need to think about, could we actually open for more days or throughout the year in terms of, and what might that mean. So what might we find out next? Well, if we're losing money, you might start to look at, well, we've got the revenue, we know that over time. I'd love to look at the cost base and what's driving the costs against this over time, and how variable they are. Can we ramp down through the quiet periods or not, etc. So let's just do a couple more in sort of 5 or 10 minutes. So situation, client purchased a popcorn manufacturing plant that makes popcorn for 2 mid-sized brands. CEO saw the margins, she loved it and decided to manufacture popcorn under her own brand. So this is like outsourcing. So we are a manufacturer, we sell Coles and Woolies brands or equivalent. The CEO sees and goes, hey, great margins, we should have our own brand here. You might structure it, why does CEO, like we won't go into detail, but why does CEO want to do it? Market, some stuff about the market, what's going on, and then like sort of think about the capabilities, costs, competitors. And to be clear, sorry, how should we enter the market was the question. So that's just a little bit of context, but let someone have a go at clearing this slide. All right, that's going to call someone. Joe, do you want to have a go?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, this is a graph of the product line financials. So this is showing the cost breakdown per 100 bags, right? So yeah, so there's the two brands, one's Poppy's popcorn and the other one's Pete's premium popcorn. As you can see, they're both retail for different prices. One's $3.10 and one's $4.50. And then it's got the breakdown based on where the labor is going, raw materials, plant equipment, rent, and the contribution margin. So I guess my first question would be like, what is contribution margin? Is that just the margin that they make on?
Yeah, it's contribution margin overhead, so there's no corporate overhead. So your operating margin would be what I'd define that as in this one.
Okay, cool. So operating margin, awesome. Yeah, so the things that stand out are probably the difference between the two in terms of the overhead margin. Yeah, like one is double the other. All the other kind of breakdown look roughly the same. Yeah, and then these two numbers up the top, I guess, that's just the total, right? For how much it costs to make 100 bags.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So some things you could calculate, you could actually calculate a few things off this, like how much margin you're making per bag. What are the other insights? I mean, we've clearly got a entry level or sort of mid-level popcorn or premium. Super insightfully, the materials are actually the same. Popcorn's popcorn. It depends. I mean, obviously, even though I thought you might add more butter and salt and something to the premium one, but clearly not. The difference is to make a more expensive one. It's actually cheaper to make the premium one and plant and equipment. Interesting. Super interesting. Likewise, the rent. So maybe there's a volume. There might be a volume play or something happening on there and the margin, but like really, really interestingly, and that's as a percentage of the price. So the more premium you are, clearly that's how you start to make the price. So there's some stuff you can start to draw out. Look, so in terms of market entry, if we're trying to say how should we enter this market, what's the real question that comes away from this you're initially trying to work out? What sort of
what would your positioning be?
Yeah, what does this tell you about the answering that question of what our positioning might be?
Yeah, so I mean, like, it looks like if you want to enter the popcorn market, you want to come in as premium. So I would want to see how feasible it is to come in against Pete's premium popcorn as well. Like how much room in the market there is for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because obviously, if she was interested in this because of the margins, and so it would make sense that she'd be much more interested in the premium range because that obviously has higher margins based on what we've got here.
Cool. So what might we want to look at next then? If that's what we think, hey, there's some really interesting stuff here. You can make good margin on both. There's either volume play at the lower end, or you can make quite good margin with premium products. Obviously, we have the capability, but what would you need to work out? What would your answer is that at the moment maybe premium could be a really good one because of the high margins and the ability to do it. But what would we want to know?
Yeah, then I'd probably take a step back and look at what we actually what we have from a factory point of view right now. Like, what are we better suited to producing for? Like,
well,
do we have a large?
We make both of these.
Yeah.
Because these are true. Yep. So what's the one thing that there's? What's the biggest thing you want to know to work out where you could actually enter the market? With what part of the market you'd enter in?
The different channels and which kind of customers would be purchasing each of each ones, and how.
Yeah, I think so. Channel or positioning, and so you might sort of look at and go, hey, how do we think about the market landscape and the positioning, and where's the relative sort of space or that to actually put this in the market, and does that, and so you can sort of go, hey, there's a price versus quality type play, and what's it, and where is that? Who are the competitors in that? What are they doing, and what does that market actually look like? So what you're trying to work out is where, if I want to enter premium, I need to sort of somewhere up here look at how I'm going to compete against and those sort of particular brands. Just quickly, another one is Super Battery Co. We make expensive batteries for mobile homes, motorhomes in Australia, powerful, long-lasting, and of high quality. They're starting to sell cheaper batteries as a factory standard to lower the overall price. And now our product is only offered as an additional feature for which the customers must pay extra. How do we maintain profits in these new market conditions? So you might have some sort of basic structure with some sort of profitability. When you want to worry about, there's two levers we can pull. We can recover lost volume, or we can reduce our costs and sell less. There's some stuff we might want to know across the sort of market, capabilities, competitors, customers, costs, so the 4 Cs. And also you might look at new volume in this one as well. So you might look at where else I can sell these batteries to recoup some of that volume. So once again, same sort of thing. Does someone? Oh, you did the battery one already. You've done this one, particular one, but okay, that's cool. But who wants to? Someone have a go at how would you clear this slide? Chris?
Just finding the unmute. So as we can see here, the battery cost comparison between the low cost and Battery Co. Here it's broken down across the contribution margin, rent, plant and equipment, raw materials, and labor. What we can see is the percentage for the contribution margin overall is higher for that low cost. And we can see that the major contribution, it's more around the raw materials that go into that cost for the low cost battery. And we're looking at more in the labor for the Battery Co.
What do we think it means? What's the insights?
I think one of the really interesting things is that the labor cost for Battery Co is more than the entire cost of the low cost battery.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a really interesting insight, and then I think that what you do there, and I know we flicked through it, you tie it back to here. Well, if we want to maintain profitability and keep selling as we do, we're going to have to reduce costs. We're going to have to either, be able to sell either sell our battery cheaper or make more money per battery. Potentially are the two sort of options. Well, what would one of the things I could think here is, well, actually, given its material or sort of a labor cost, how might I go about that? And you might go about that by, okay, well, do we need to automate? Do we need to other ways we can make the batteries differently? Potentially not. It might be that ours are really bespoke type batteries, in which case, can we, start to throw up? Can we do it? How would you do it? Well, do we need a a fighter brand or some way, and a different way we can bring them in a different way to compete. I think what you might, but I think what you're going to very quickly get to is that unless we're going to invest a punt load of money in automating and bring it, which will be very hard to bring down as much as we need to, the cost of making our expensive batteries. So that sort of starts to say there's two options. I either need to have a different sort of battery made sort of different way that I can compete with the low cost, or I need to find new markets to do that, because I'm probably not going to be able to or I can look to manufacture this offshore or something like manufacturing my batteries offshore. So it sort of starts to give you some insights and flavors around how you might reduce costs or what your real options might be. But same thing, like good process. So what do we got with a cost comparison? We got the revenue decompositions of the dollars per battery, which is, so it gives us sort of the cost breakdown or the where the revenue goes, which is really interesting, of our competitor and ours. And then you can get into those sort of insights and what you might see. The so what's might be then around, well, if this is the cost side and those are our options, I might want to start to look at the other side of the fence and understand a little bit about the market or market share or what else is happening. So just conscious of time, might jump through, and go ask if there's any questions.
Hi, Kieran, Chris here. Because you've gone through and you have the information there, and then you're kind of talking it through, and then you're hoping people kind of infer the right message, would you overtly call out the messages? So for instance, with the battery one just there, would you put your kind of hypothesis in there?
Yeah, for sure. You should verbalize that. Actually, at the moment, we sort of started thinking, because at the end of your structure, you might go, hey, there's a lot of steer here, but what I know about the industry, I think there's a couple of options that we could go down. I think potentially this would be the most interesting one to start with. Once you've got that information, you go, okay, cool. What does it mean? Well, it means that actually maybe the best path here is to do this, or the only options we really have are now based on this is only to do A or B. So you should definitely refine and verbalize your hypothesis as you move through, and because and therefore and link it to what you want to do next. And therefore, I think I want to look at this to work out whether either of those is a viable option or whatever that, however that might link through.
Kieran, so in the context of a case interview, these sort of exhibits, would they normally come up straight after you've asked the kind of initial case, or would it normally come a bit later as they've worked through the problem?
Depends. Each case is different. Some might have not exhibits, some might just give you some information. Some might not have any and ask you to think about it, like the in-case brainstorming. You're going to get all of the above. Usually the more detailed exhibits come later because it sort of allows you to join, but not always. And if you sort of want are really keen on costs, and that was going to be the third exhibit, they might actually give it to you first. Cool. So this is healthy foods company. So clients, healthy foods, wholesaler, variety of food products. Client is profitable, but they want you to help them find revenue growth from their current business. So how do we drive revenue growth? And this is sort of the typical guide you might get. So let's say you've structured this, and let's just assume that you've structured it in whatever way in that context. One thing to note is pie charts are horrible, and never use them ever if you're putting together a slide, just as a note on the side, on the sun. Stat bars. Cool. So Jason, do you want to have a go at this one? And I am only picking up people with the videos on, so apologies. I'm not actually 100%. I'm worried that if I call on someone that doesn't have a video on, that they're not actually going to be there.
Okay, so this exhibit, is showing total market by revenues by customer type. So the different types of customers are independent restaurants, chain restaurants, hospitals, school cafeterias, grocery stores, and other. So independent restaurants are making up the majority of the revenues for this business, closely followed by grocery stores. Now, I'd want to know from this what others are. So independent, just making sure I'm not missing any notes at the bottom. Yep.
So if I sort of said at this point, talk me through a thought process around a 3-question loop. What's the problem we're trying to solve?
The problem we're trying to solve is how they're going to grow.
Revenue, yep.
Yep. So
what is this, based on this, what's your best answer?
My best answer would be trying to increase some of the smaller market revenues. So I might look at chain restaurants, hospitals, and grocery stores.
Challenging that. What don't you know from this?
How many players there are in these?
Yeah. Do we know where we operate?
We just know we're a CPG, so most likely we should be in
most likely, but what does the answer different if we're trying to grow revenue and we're only in chain restaurants versus if we are very strong in independent restaurants and we're looking to grow revenue? So what's the, I think for me the best answer here is to say, look, from a market size, independent restaurants seem to be such a large share of the market. That'd be a great opportunity to grow revenue or our market share as a focus here, depending on how much we have. Otherwise, we might look at which of the other markets we can transfer our skills across to. So chain restaurants, or might be one that's got a lot of synergies with that if we're not strong there. But to really understand this, what I need to understand is how our revenue is broken down. Where are we selling at the moment? And therefore, to start to get a view on whether we're trying to grow share in existing markets or whether we're going to look to enter some of these other ones that are on the slide here, and particularly that independent and some of those larger ones. See how that 3-question, see how that was, for me, feels like sort of broadly where you might want to head with this, because what the insight is, well, this is the market, what I don't, and so if I just looked at this and all I knew was this, the big ones are likely attractive, unless I sort of thought that, some risks around that. Chain restaurant is quite big, but often they have really difficult procurement departments that, screw margins down and things like that. So I think, and so coming back to, variety of clients with food products. So we're a supplier to these different industries. What I don't know is, how much we sell into each. Now, I actually am not sure in this case if that's what comes next, but that's what I'd be. It does. So, and what's really good there is, this is more share of wallet. So it doesn't actually tell you which part we're operating in, but it starts to get to some of that in terms of can we actually grow share of wallet. So let's maybe go to Andrew. Do you want to have a nudge at this one?
Yeah, so for this slide, we're looking at the client share of wallet. Sorry, I'm a bit, just want to get my bearings on this one.
Yep.
Yeah, so we're looking at customer A is our biggest customer, where we have 60% of the share of wallet. And then as we sort of go down, our share of wallet is decreasing. And we potentially have an opportunity where there are other food suppliers supplying the same client. So maybe looking at A, we might be able to extract a higher share, or C, for instance, where we sort of split a 30% share with another competitor.
This is a really horrible slide, isn't it?
Yeah.
let's just throw that out. This is a terrible slide. This is actually I didn't look at this too much last night. I just grabbed this is from Sam. This is from last year. What I think they used in this session last year.
This is disgusting.
Yeah, it's really hard to get your head around, and that's okay. Like you're going to get some really hard slides at some point. And so, let's try to work out what exactly it's telling me. So I think what I'm getting to, and you could have taken longer to work out this, because I think if it's a hard slide like this, it's okay to really puzzle it out for a little bit. So what's it showing? Okay, so it's got customer size. And so it's sort of 4 categories or buckets, groupings of customer size. And then we've got the share of wallet. And so for customers where we're the primary food supplier, we have average, I'm imagining it's about average 60% for those large ones, we have 60% of their share of wallet. Where we're mini, where they've got lots of, and they use sort of multi-supplier strategy, we've got 45. So we're actually still pretty good in terms of the ones where they have, even the ones where they have mini. The other ones there in B, in the next size down, what's sort of similar, so it's kind of story, but a little bit more spread. In terms of some of those other ones, the smaller we get, that comes back together. So for the small ones, we've got on average, I'd sort of say 25% of their wallet share, but where we're one of many, we've still got 25%. So I still don't even understand how this works in terms of what it's actually telling me. So I'd actually be trying to ask questions, and I'm like going, hey, talking through this, I'm really struggling to understand how, what this is actually, and have we understood some of the fundamentals wrong, and delving into that a little bit with the slide.
Could it be also that we appear to be, having pretty good relationships with our larger customers because we've got a larger share of their wallet, but where we're one of many, we seem to be doing really well with especially the largest customers, but potentially we could find out more around the smaller customers and see whether we can attempt to gain a greater share of their wallet.
Yeah, it's interesting. And there's something that's drawing here to say that in X, if we've got 25 and we're the primary, and they're one of many who've also got 25, it sort of says that in the primary one where we have our primary food, it must be really fragmented in terms of the other. In terms of the other suppliers. I don't know if that's an insight. So like for on X, and the dark purple being the same as the light, what it's sort of saying is 75% of the rest is provided by others, but we're the primary. So no one else is anywhere near as big as us. So the rest is really fragmented. But whereas we're one of many, but we're not the biggest. So we've got 25% of theirs, but there must be someone bigger than us because we're not the primary. And then you can start to say, well, there's 2 tactics here. Do we try and on the ones where we do we try and mop up some of those little ones? So we think the fragmented ones, they must be doing lots of different things. It's hard. It's probably expensive for them to manage. We can come in with some sort of solution that makes that easy for them. And likewise, on the one where we're not the biggest, okay, is that a risk for the biggest player doing that to us, or can we work out why they prefer someone else to us and fix our offering so we can take more share of their wallet? That might be some way you can sort of start to think about it. But even at the top, when we're the big customers, share of wallet, when we're 50%, and we're one of many, we're not the primary. I mean, that sort of means that the next biggest one must be quite significant. But yeah, I think it's a horrible slide, like the more I look at it. And so I would this is a great one to actually talk to and use and look, to be fair, the person giving it will know that it's a hard slide. And so the trap here in some ways is trying to get too far down into the insight when you don't really, it's in the slides very hard to understand because you end up going in the wrong direction. And so there's actually there's potentially a little bit of a test to check people to see actually if there might be a small number of people that just get it, but most people are going to need to ask and get some support from the interviewer to actually unpack what this actually means and how and what it actually is showing. Because it's really hard to get a view. Like that share of wallet is an average share of wallet. there's just not enough information on here to really understand what the data is showing you.
Kieran, with a slide like this, how many questions is it acceptable to interrogate the interviewer in terms of, you know, because I looked at this and I'm like, I've got no idea what I'm actually looking at.
So you need to try a little bit. There are some things you can get into here, but and you want to sort of ask in decent questions, not just, well, this is hard, can you explain it to me? You can probably go down that way. But you can sort of go, look, okay, so I take it, I'm assuming that the A, B, C, and D, that's or is it this? Is this actually just a representative of a representative single client? I'm assuming this is A is our biggest client. B is like the 25th percentile representative client, you know, down that, and actually getting that understanding of what that's showing. And then I'll go share of wallet. Well, what do we actually mean by share? That exact definition. What does it say? Is this because what I'm seeing here is for well, actually, you need, because that first one is probably wrong, because A is saying that there's actually at least two customers shown in there. So it might be an average or a representative. So you sort of, you want to be slightly targeted, not just say, can you explain this to me? But like you can sort of go, okay, I'd love to sort of, I'm not really sure I understand what it means by it's our largest customer, but we've got multiple customers sort of one, there's at least two customers shown there. So that doesn't sort of make sense. So can you explain what this is getting at and how this is working? Because I mean, I still don't know. Like this is a really, it could mean lots of things depending on the detail of what it actually is being shown there.
Yeah, this one gets worse the longer you look at it.
Yeah,
you just have more questions that are unanswered.
Yeah, generally you won't get a slide like this because most people will realize that it's a shitty, unless someone's a particularly a type of person that likes to make people squirm and make it hard. And maybe then what you might get is a little bit of a test to see if you're actually going to run with something without really understanding it, or you're either going to make sure you understand it before you move on. And that's the way I'd take this, is make sure you genuinely understand it before you move on. I think that's about all we can learn from this one. Let's not try and beat ourselves up over understanding it if we're not going over without more info. Okay, so let's hope this one's slightly better. Shri, do you want to have a go at talking through this one?
So, the way I see it, it looks at the wallet size, but not actually looking at comparisons of what metrics we are using to compare for wallet size. Is it based on the purchases? And sorry, I'm just trying to comprehend. So the ones which I could see is that hospitals is quite interesting point where it looks a bit fuzzy, like how is it related to wallet size for percentage of in hospitals, where they are more into the other side as compared to hotels.
Yeah, I think so. The way I'd approach, I think this side is actually a bit better. And I think the point from the one before was to say we need to focus on the smaller customers and grow them. And I think the fact that they were, for whatever reason, the fact that the C and X were the same size bars was linked to the insight that gets you to say, let's focus on that end of the market for growing revenue. So this starts to tell us a little bit more about those customers. And what it says, I think, is if you're going to clear it, you go, okay, so what we've got here is wallet size versus the share of wallet. I'm assuming that's our share of their wallet. And the answer, I think, is yes. And so, and we're noted for smaller revenue generating. Is that just the bottom end, that B to, that C to X or that on? Yep, okay, it's the bottom 50%, they might tell you. And I like the fact that it's across the different customer types, different market types. That's really interesting. So we've got all of the 5 different markets shown here. So I can relate that back to the pie chart to overlay that I know that what doesn't have independent. So which is interesting as well. So that's really interesting. What we obviously sort of getting to a point is that we must be strong and independent or not able to play in independent. So I was looking at the other ones and where we might want to grow. Cool. So then what we've got millions, the size of wallet in dollars and millions. Interesting. So this is for the and then the percentage share of that wallet we've got. So this sort of must be an aggregated view for all for all those segments, how big is the spend in our place and how much of that market do we have is the share of the wallet at the bottom. Awesome. Okay, so I've sort of laid out, I haven't looked at the actual data, what it's telling me, but I've got what we couldn't get on the other one. I actually understand the chart, and I've talked through and understand this chart that we have here. Now, what does the relative placement of those dots show me? So what we're probably interested in is the larger ones. And we've got two options. If we've got a high share of wallet, do we believe we can grow more? Or do we think we're going to look to grow our share where we have a lower share? So for example, there's two sort of plans to say, hey, I think hotels and hospitals are the real target. They're big wallets that we currently have a low share, and there might be a lot of space for us to be able to grow share in that. Or you believe that the large wallet for a chain restaurants may be that we have really good relationships with these chains and we can actually pick up more of their supply. Probably less believe that, so I think we're going to go with the former. So I think with this, if we're going to grow our revenue, 3-question loop, then I would focus on hospitals and hotels because they've got large shares of wallet where we currently have a low share of, and there's a real opportunity for us to look at how we might grow our share of wallet within those. To actually refine that a little bit, I'd love to understand what the purchase criteria for those are and what's important to them in terms of their buying and when they're deciding and what we currently provide them, so we can work out an approach for how we might grow that share of wallet with them. Does that seem? I mean, it's probably not necessarily the best answer, but does that say that's a reasonable answer? I've really logical. I made sure on this one, after that disaster of the last one, I really understood the chart. Then I've got some insight to say, actually, the big ones, they're all actually reasonably sized. So, but the ones that seem, if you quadranted this, the ones that top left is potentially the most attractive for us to look at in terms of opportunity for these reasons. And then what I want to do next is work out how we actually approach them. What you might add to that answer is to go, well, I think what would hospitals and hotels care about? If you had any thoughts, I don't off the top of my head. In terms of their buying of ingredients, but I think but I think that they're probably quite different. Hospitals probably budget end, hotels is probably upper end, or depending on which hotels you're looking at, if it's 5-star hotels versus that, or it's probably a spread. Love to also know where we position. Is our food Whole Foods probably at the upper end? So maybe the hotel space is a bit better for us because we can target those more premium 4- and 5-star hotels without more of a premium product.
Kieran, in terms of, I guess, getting to the end of this slide, and you obviously want to look at where you're going next, as you said, with hospitals and hotels. So, is it sort of the best approach to look at? Okay, these are our two most attractive options, and now we're going to investigate which of those two is the best path, rather than going, hey, hospitals and hotels, go for both of those.
Well, I think so, and I think that's your answer. Is that look, the two I think are most attractive initially based on this data are hotels and hospitals. But actually, if I had to prioritize one of them, I actually think because we're in the premium, my first leaning or my first thought would be hotels potentially has more upside. And so maybe that's the one we look at in a little bit more detail first. But what we need to understand is those purchase criteria and what they're looking for and how that relates to what we're selling across both of them. But my feeling is that hotels is going to be a better option because we're a premium end, and we all know hospital food's crap. So unless there's some private hospitals that have gone like much better quality food than private, which might be in the US, maybe there is a good market there for like private hospitals that are selling, gourmet food on health insurance. But that's sort of giving a view, not locking into it, but giving a view. What we're going to do next, giving a view of why and how I might think about it, and bringing some outside information or thinking that might colour that, show that I've got good sort of ability to think about the problem and broader business awareness. So that's it. If there's any other, happy we've got 10 minutes left. Are there any other sort of questions about these topics or case interviews in general or consulting in general, or the answer to question 3 in the operations exam in a couple of weeks. I'm not sure I can help on that one.
I just had a quick one, Kieran, on MECE. It's not, I've seen it the last couple of weeks, but it's not something I'm familiar with or had a discussion about. I mean, I've looked up what it means. Is there anything you can briefly say on that concept?
Yeah, I mean, it's out of McKinsey, so you know what I mean, mutually exclusive, completely exhaustive. What it means is you've considered everything and that your buckets don't overlap. And so the consulting would say bucket everything. Everything should have, you've got a whole range of stuff. You actually want to put it into buckets at a higher level so you can think about it. And so back to the cost breakdown and breaking down a cost P&L, you want to make sure you've got the range of everything so that you've not just focused on the couple of the physical, the external, the internal costs. And what people do is go, well, my internal costs are this and this. They forget the external costs. In that case, it's not completely exhaustive. The other one then is and then the other example there is if the to make sure that they're separate is if you had fixed and variable costs and you tried to put something in both as a fixed and a variable cost, they're not mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
So what you're trying to do is you want to just think about things in one area. So you need to make a call about where it goes, and your buckets must represent that. But you want to make sure you've got the range covered.
Sure. Thanks.